Right, this one is a banger because it's going to be one that preempts the future, which is I've told people on all these shows that for me, from early this year onwards, when you saw that this Mouse team was actually legit, like this core is going to be in the playoffs of every tournament, and in theory, like they should have been capable of winning some lands like they did. In fact, you could even argue maybe they could have won more lands. They're another one of those teams for me, like a Vitality, where I actually would be a bit disappointed with some of the results. I would look and be like, we have the map pool, we have the player strength. By the way, everyone wants our players too. We should be in all these finals. We should be the ones. It should basically, by the way, if you're in those three teams, other teams have different factors as to why they have. Those three teams, Na'Vi, Vitality, and Mouse, all three of those teams, if you think of the strengths they have, should be like battling each other in like a rock, paper, scissors for the championship. It should be like Nadal, Federer, Djokovic, like shit where it's like depends, but it isn't. It's just Na'Vi at the moment. It's just Na'Vi. Vitality just fucks it up every semi, and then Mouse is probably the weirdest of them all because they can beat anyone, but they just don't when it really matters. So here's my take. I've always told people, because of the nature of buyouts and the fact that these players have been in Mouse quite a while now, and they are not only people that like other teams want, they've already wanted them. Most of these players, almost every player in this team, I don't know that I've heard a big offer for Tosh or anything, but almost every other player, someone out there wants them. Like the joke is, Brawlan is even wanted by everyone who wants to make a Swedish team for obvious reasons if they ever want to make like a Swedish super team again, which by the way, they're always going to keep thinking about, guys. That's always going on behind the scenes as long as those same players are in the scene. So what I will say is this. I think a lot of people agree with me that this is probably the last season this Mouse lineup gets. After this major, unless you basically win it, because what I actually think you'd have to do financially is you'd probably have to win the major, because basically the only thing that keeps these players in this team is if you're Mouse, you have to probably go to your investment group and go, look, we're going to have to match basically the biggest salaries in the world. We're going to have to match like a Falcons offer. Vitality wants this player. G2 wants this guy. And if we don't, we need to keep all five. It's like what Ents could have done basically. Actually could have, but they just weren't able to, which is if we can keep everyone together, we'll do a match and it'll be worth it. But obviously there's no point doing it if it's 3 out of 5 or something. You do it if you get the whole team, because you're banking on the idea the team is what's worth it. Here's my take. Even though people are going to be really sad in the moment when they break up after the season, because they're probably not going to win the major. When they don't win the major and you all hear those stories like, oh my God, Zershan's in this team now, and then Yimfat's in this team, and then Shui's going to this other squad. We're all going to get really sad, and we're all going to go, oh, bloody business interests, getting money, getting in the way of teams. I wanted to see this team play. They could have been like Astralis and won everything. You know what my actual hot take is? If they actually don't win the major and they split up, they should split up. Like this lineup actually has run its course. I'm telling you right now, like I've seen this lineup play now like a whole year. That's about around the time last year, remember, when they had the Pro League event, etc., and they got this lineup together and they won the last CS2 event. If you look at this squad, here's the reason why I think they need to break up. Because in my opinion, when you have a team where they choke, it doesn't tend to be one player. I don't believe one player can make a team choke. I think that tends to come from something about like the team culture when you're down in certain situations. I think you have multiple players who sort of almost egg each other on to choke, like this person's having an issue, so then someone overcompensates or he plays more conservative. And I think if you look at this squad, everyone's been given them this credit that goes like this. Well, it's because they're so young, they're inexperienced. Like that's actually kind of like become an outdated narrative now, guys. If you think about it, right? First of all, the only player who has like realistic, true inexperience on this team is Yimfat, because he's only been around the pro scene for around a year or so, right? Even he, by the way, actually looked totally fine at the first major they played at. He's not the person who's like choky every game and playing like shit. You look at the rest of their players, Toshi's been there forever. If people don't know, Toshi's been in Mouse since 2021. Then you have like Zershan's been there since 2022. Shuhi was there in 2022 in Gamer League and then came back to the Mouse, obviously, and was playing at majors from Rio onwards in 2022. And then Brawlan himself has a bazillion years of experience. He goes all the way back to Fnatic before even the onliner. So there's only actually one still inexperienced players. The rest of them, they're just players, I'm sorry, just haven't come through in the big moments. And the reason why I also think you make a move is this, because there's two factors I think are logical as to why this team doesn't ever really deliver on the potential you think they have. One is, even though they don't have very inexperienced, but they don't have veteran players though. Like, the joke is Brawlan is their veteran, and emotionally, maturity-wise, he's still something considered like a young guy or an inexperienced guy, even though he's way more tenured than them. And then lastly, I think if you look at the strengths of their players, beyond Yimfat, the newest guy, I don't think any player is actually reliable in this team. Like, I'm a big fan of Exertion, but he's an incredibly hit-and-miss player. Torshi, I think, might be literally, before every Torshi shot, flip a coin. If it comes up heads, he hits the shot. If it comes up tails, he misses. It doesn't matter what shot it is. He goes for every shot as fast as possible. So I think when you look at this squad, there's not really, the problem also is they don't have a donk. They don't have a Ziwu who plays every game and frags up. So actually, if you look at the squad, the potential is real. I mean, we've seen it. They can beat, in theory, anyone. They can win on almost all the maps, by the way. It's all, every factor you'd want. They have all this youth going for them. They've got a little bit of experience. But I actually do think if you to do the overall puzzle, if they don't win in this season, they probably should just split up, because at this point in time, it'll actually solve the earlier point Kassad's saying. I tell you what, if you take this team and split it apart and spread it among the top 5 squads, you'll have an amazing top end of the scene. I actually think their time has run. Unless it's either shit or get off the pot now. Everyone else, I feel like, is going the other way. And you're like, you guys would give them all like 2 more years of this. I think if they don't win now, they're not going to win. And there's something wrong with this squad.
Yeah, I do agree with that one, though. I think they should split up if they don't win the major. But I think also that you're right that they will split up in a sense, at least, because that's Mouz's business model, right?
Oh, sure,
like
yes.
When you look at it, like you have Shui, right, academy player, Torji, academy player, Yimfat, academy player, Exertion, academy player. So they invested really not that much money into them, right? Especially there is no buyouts, and obviously Brolan was from NIP. I don't know what the deal is. It was loaned and buyout. I don't know, whatever. But the thing is, so the only real investment, like, short term, like kind of instant investment, was for Brolan, right? In case they actually bought him. Everybody else was like gradually, like probably, getting the salaries raised, but they had no initial cost in them. It was just academy player. Probably kept them on 1 year on some sort of like 1.7k salary, right? So it's just their business model. They end up selling. That's happened to Nico. That's happened to Frozen. That's happened to multiple people, and that's how they operate. And that's nothing wrong with it. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. When it comes to team itself, like, I guess you can compare them to result-wise. All the Astralis before they got Magisk, right, as that last piece instead of Kerber, right? And they started winning. They were this team that were kind of win something, and they were always top 4, top 8, top 6, whatever finals, but they never really got an era, right? And then they got Magisk, and they turned into this, best team of all time, right? Is that something that Mouz can do? Maybe. But the question is, who is that who is that final piece? Who is that player swap that will bring you from potentially winning to favorite to win, right? Who is that guy? Who do you replace? Is Exertion? Because I do agree, again, it's a hit or miss. He's a good player, but sometimes he just goes AFK on the server completely. Torji, I would keep him. He's a good player. IGL, very big demand on the IGLs right now. Keep him. Brolan, I don't know. I guess you can keep him. So maybe Exertion is the one. So it wouldn't even be bad for him to go to somewhere else like Vitality or teams similar to that caliber, right? Even maybe Liquid or something, right? So the thing is, like, completely disbanding. I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe 2 players at the end of the season would be a good thing for all sides. And especially financial side for Mousesports, because all these players signed recently-ish, and they are going to be in a high, their stock will be high, and they're going to be, like, wanted. And the same way Frozen was wanted by FaZe, I'm sure there's going to be teams like G2 that are going to be going for some players because they're going to make some money off Nico, Monacy, whoever they sell. They're going to have some money in the pocket so they can reach out and get some players for G2. So there is a world where that happens. I'm pretty sure, as well as you are, that they're not going to win the major, especially with the form they're having right now. So it's a very possible outcome that we won't see this Mouz lineup after Shanghai. Yeah.
Thoughts, Maui?
I feel like the idea that they should break up is one that I would normally agree with, because I generally think that after three months, I guess that term is maybe a little dated now, just because like the frequency of events is so high now. I think it's more like 3 events, 4 events is where you kind of realize what a team is, and we've obviously seen more than that many for Mouz. But the one differing factor that I have in my mind for this Mouz team that separates them is that they're just so young. Like the average age is 21 years of age, like 21.1, and even that TSM lineup with Cajun B and Kerrigan had a couple players that were 25 years old. So like they were much older, and that's why I feel like you can kind of have made that assumption that they're not really going to get better. At that point, like I think it was Device and Zipnix were like 20 years old or 21 years old also, which is also kind of on the higher end. Like Exertion and Yimpat are both 18 and 20 years old right now. So they're still very young. Like nobody was a teenager on that TSM lineup when they were almost winning a lot of their events. And that's why I still hold out for them, because the mental, like the emotional maturity, just I mean, all forms of maturity obviously improve as you get older. And I feel like having a literal teenager on the team still is probably why they're not going to look to Yimpat for some kind of emotional moral leader, whereas he could probably be pretty jovial in a studio environment, but it doesn't sound like the comms are like that. Like the only guy that I hear whose comms are really good in late round situations, or not late round, like late game situations, is basically just Shuhei from all these like listen-ins we get. And he's kind of forcing it. Like he's 22 years old and he knows that he has to do something for them in these kinds of moments, other than Cyclone, who's probably going to call a timeout. But Cyclone, you know, as much as he probably wants to even be the emotional leader too, he probably has to be like, guys, I need to tell you the strat in these 30 seconds that I have. I can't do everything. So that's why I would hold out for them. This is the rare case where I would. I also think that a very underrated point that was on, like, for JDC actually, was that this guy was so good at being just very fun in moments. And it actually, something that I think is kind of ridiculous, and player quality wise, like JDC's been the highest rated player for Big for the last 3 months, even above Crimbo, even above Sursen's Resurgence. And he actually plays a lot of very active spots like Brolin now. And oh my God, I've heard Brolin on these comms, and he's basically, he's like a dead fish.
Is Moe actually about to do a hot take that they should bring JDC back instead of Brolin? Is that going to be the take?
I mean, like, honestly,
he's so close to doing it. Come on.
I am really close, because I do think Brolin's better. Like, Brolin is a better player.
Okay.
I'd want Brolin in studio environments more, but I just think that there needs to be one more player that acts as a veteran. And JDC is a few years older than Brolin. He's a couple years older than Brolin. I think he's 24 versus 22. He knows how to interact with all these guys, given that he helped bring them onto this team, except for Yimpat, of course, who took his spot. But then also, he's incredibly positive, quite charismatic, and can be a moral leader when they need somebody to break the tension that is mounting in these games where they clearly have pressure issues. So I would just think that there needs to be someone else than Shuhei that does it, because nobody else is doing it. And JDC would be my number one option, because I hate to say it, but the power of friendship is probably the closest thing that's going to get this team to an era. Like, they're this close, and JDC is a little bit worse. He's probably, in my eyes, like 10% worse than Brolin as a player, but probably 50% better as an emotional leader. So I think that's actually worth it.
By the way,
in very specific moments for this.
What's funny is I actually was originally going to do a different take that I tweaked to be specifically about Mouz, because that's one of the other reasons why I think, like, even if you kept the same lineup, I think you should make a player change, which is basically, I think you need one more veteran player who doesn't have any of these issues, performance like that. They've been there and done it. Because I do think the problem, essentially, what I could have made this take is I was going to do a take that's like, nowadays I actually think people overrate rookies because of exactly this factor. They think he can just make a team with like 3 or 4 like inexperienced players, and then you just win if they're good enough. Whereas it's like, if anything, I actually think the mix is probably more like 2 inexperienced players and then like 2 experienced and then 1 in the middle or something. You know, I think people now just, it's like we've gone from before, we only want veterans before, to now like, fuck all veterans, let's take anyone with like 1% better aim, which is like, what?
Two things. I think the first is that I always felt like the ideal roster construction was three younger players, 2 older players.
Okay.
I think of Chris J and Kerrigan on the Mouse lineup that they had back in the day, and like the middleman would be like Woxic in this case for like light amounts of experience, but then Rops and Frozen were kind of the young guns on that. And I feel like that model has succeeded in a few different ways over time, and then you kind of like turn them out, whereas like after Rops gets 2 years under his belt, 3 years under his belt, now you can afford to take a Chris J out, put in another rookie type player. I'm not like, you know, the names don't really matter in this case. It's just about pure experience. The other thing, what was it going to be? Oh, yeah. No, I think a single player change for Mouz would actually, I would like it a lot more than actually, and I almost don't even care who it is at this point, because maybe not Shuhei, maybe not Yimpat, but like if you could get a lot of different players just to change the vibe of the team at this point, I feel like that would be so appreciated for Mouz. There's something else I was going to say too, but I'll get back to it if I remember it.
It's all good.
What the fuck are you guys talking about? But before you, Duncan, before you go, like the thing is like when it comes to like JDC is like no. The things they played together didn't work. Trust me. Like putting back the play that is already broken is not gonna work. Shit will gonna leak. Like no matter how much you try. I tried it. I burned. It's not way to go. Like I can understand somebody more. I don't want to say experienced or like an older player, but maybe somebody with a different character. Yes, that can work. Because who gives a fuck if somebody's 25, 21, 29, doesn't fucking matter. You can have a 29-year-old hothead just trying to think that he's the fucking best guy ever when he can't do shit on the key positions. Also, you can have fucking 22-year-old, a player that's, you know, mature in a way that he can communicate and be like, you know, emotional, like you said, leader. So age doesn't fucking make a difference at all. Exactly. Maybe the things like the change of personalities.
Yes. Personality, cultural fit, the experience, maturity. By the way, I definitely agree on the maturity part, because I'm just looking up. Smoothie is 25, and apparently, in even more literal ways than I thought, he's just a shower of shit. So... oh, sorry. I don't know if anyone else heard that rumor, but you know, just see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content. Well, subscribe to this channel then, or you know, be a pleb and don't.